Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a pretty intense online debate. We're breaking down a point-by-point rebuttal from the YouTube channel D's Education, which takes on another creator's analysis of Hinduism. We're going to map out exactly how they build their case. Right from the get-go, the source video does not pull any punches. It kicks off with this really powerful statement, immediately setting a super critical tone and making it clear this is going to be a direct counterargument. Okay, so before we dive in, just a quick heads up about how we're going to handle this. We are not taking sides here, and we're not fact-checking the claims. Our job is simply to lay out the key arguments from the source video so you can understand exactly what they're saying and how they're saying it. All right, so how is this whole thing structured? Well, the rebuttal is basically built around 5 key themes. We're going to walk through each one to really get the layers of this counterargument. So first up, they tackle the big one, the absolute foundation of this whole disagreement. Is the Ramayana a myth, or is it actual history? The rebuttal's first big move is to completely reject the mythology label. And this is really the cornerstone of their whole argument. The video insists the Ramayana isn't just some story. It's what's known as itihasa, a term that literally means history, or that which truly happened. Okay, this slide does a great job of showing you the two sides of the coin here. On one side, you have the analogy the video is arguing against, comparing the Ramayana to a Spider-Man story. You know, a real setting like New York City doesn't make Spider-Man real. But on the other side, you have the rebuttal, which says, no, that comparison is totally wrong, because the Ramayana is itihasa. Those accurate locations are actually evidence of it being real history. All right, let's move on to the next major point, and you'll see how this argument starts to build. Now we're getting into how the video explains all the miraculous events, the things that seem, well, physically impossible. You know, one of the biggest points of skepticism is always about the miracles, right? Like, how could Lord Hanuman lift an entire mountain? The video even quotes the opposing view, saying, even a child can understand this isn't physically possible. So they tackle that skepticism head on. So their answer isn't to say, no, that didn't happen. Instead, they offer a framework for it. They bring up this concept of Ashtasiddhi. These are 8 specific supernatural powers that figures like Lord Hanuman were said to have through spiritual discipline. And to back this up, they don't just pull this idea out of thin air. They go straight to the scriptures, quoting a super well-known text, the Hanuman Chalisa. They use this line to show that these powers are a fundamental part of the story, not just some fantasy element. They use this same kind of thinking for another famous story, the Golden Deer. The video reframes it entirely. It wasn't about Lord Rama being tricked. Instead, it was a kind of divine play to give the demon Maricha salvation, or mukti, because he chose to die by Rama's hand rather than by Ravana's. Okay, so from there, the video kind of pivots. It moves away from interpreting scripture and starts tackling some specific social claims, especially around diet and the Brahmin community. And this is where things get interesting, because the argument jumps from ancient texts right to the present day. They throw out this statistic, 45%, and it's a key piece of modern evidence they're using to challenge a historical claim. So here's the question they pose, the sort of gotcha moment. They ask, if the original claim is true, that meat eaters were historically pushed down in the caste system, then how do you explain this? How can nearly half of Brahmins be meat eaters today? They're basically saying the two ideas just don't add up. And that brings us to what's really the climax of the entire rebuttal. The argument shifts again, moving beyond just facts and interpretations to making a direct accusation about why the original video was even made. Yeah, things get a lot more personal here. The claim is that this isn't about an honest intellectual disagreement anymore. It's about money, and it's a selective attack. They're essentially saying that Hinduism is being unfairly targeted in a way that other religions aren't. So right after making that pretty heavy accusation, the creator zooms out and shares their own broader worldview. They start connecting the dots between the sheer vastness of the universe and the idea of a creator, arguing that this isn't a coincidence and that all religions basically tap into the same idea. And then they make the point that science is just a small piece of a much larger body of knowledge found in the Hindu scriptures. And this all builds to their final, really powerful concluding statement. The big idea here isn't just that the ancient texts are compatible with science. No, the argument they're making is that these Vedic texts are science in its most complete form. So after laying out all these points, from history to miracles to modern-day stats, the video does something pretty common in these online debates. It basically turns to the camera and says, it's up to you. They put the ball in the viewer's court to decide what's truth and what's propaganda. And that really leaves us with a huge question, one that's bigger than just this one video. In this wild world of online commentary, where do you draw that line between a fair intellectual critique and just targeting a religion? As these big topics collide online, understanding how the arguments are actually built is more crucial than ever. Thanks for joining us.